to the NIEA, except for the Navajos. They have to go to the federal government to get permission to apparently go down there. So anyway, they have to get approval. Okay, so we have to give some equal time to the opposing counsel. Not really. I'd like to introduce to you today two individuals that I have great respect for, and they are going to talk with us about distinguishing law, research law especially, and ethics, research ethics. Both of them are very knowledgeable about the subject matter because they teach it. I think Ray's going to lead it off, or Maynard, okay. The first individual we hear from is my old partner in crime. We went to the only real Indian law school in America, the University of Montana School of Laws. Oh, Sam can't hear that. So her name is Maynard Smith, and she is currently the able director of the Indian Law Clinic here at the University of Montana School of Law. And her partner today is Professor Ray Cross, distinguished author and noted professor of the University of Montana School of Law also. So we got 2 for 1 on this one. So please welcome Maylin and then Professor Cross.
First off, I'd like to thank Patty for putting this on right after Sam, because that's always so easy to do, is to follow Sam with a presentation. Particularly when he sort of touched on most of the things that I plan on talking on. So I think one of the things that I would like to do is really sort of make this a discussion and talk about tribal ethics and tribal regulation. And those are both things that Sam mentioned in his presentation. I am a clinician, that's what I do. So one of the things I'm always looking for as part of my job is how can we use the law to try and address problems that are out there. And one of the ways that tribes can utilize their sovereign powers is by enacting codes and regulations. And the components that you have to look at from a tribe is, do you have the resources to do that? Do you want to do that? And what are you going to include? So that's sort of what I'm going to talk about. The gentleman that asked about the contract component of it, that's going to be part of the regulation that we can talk about, is what that does for tribal powers. Most tribes that I've worked with do not have standalone ethics codes. And I think that is a huge mistake for tribes, because I think tribes are letting the IHS, the BIA, government agencies determining how matters are going to be handled within their communities. And maybe your guys' experience is better with those agencies than my experience has been, but I would like to see tribes enact the regulations and the codes to address how matters are going to be handled within their communities within Indian country. There are 2 forms of ethics that I think tribes need to look at when they're looking at developing codes. They're what I refer to as internal ethics, and then there are the external ethics. And for me, the internal ethics are how is the tribe going to operate, and some of the concerns that are raised about Indian communities are who has the authority to grant those permissions. So those are the internal component of who speaks for the tribe. That's something that can be addressed by ethics. You have a series of questions that I think tribes need to look at in making those determinations. So it may be the tribal councils, it may be committees. If you have research boards that address those issues, that's one of the places that can address it. It may be committees of elders. But the tribes need to make the determination of who makes those decisions. One of the challenges for tribes is sort of working in both these worlds. They have the internal constituents, your tribal members, people residing on the reservation, businesses, educational departments, everything that's on the reservation. But then you also have those external communities that are coming into your reservation. As a practical matter, they need to know what's expected of them. One of the ways that tribes can do that is with tribal codes. And so that's why I think tribal codes are really important, even though I may have some philosophical differences with tribes having to do it to express what they want done. That's the only real tool that's going to be recognized from the outside world. The purpose of having tribal codes is to determine what the tribe wants to protect, what those values are. And I don't want to go into values too much because I think that's more what Ray's going to be talking about. But I think when you're developing your tribal codes, those are the very things that the tribes need to determine. What are those values that they think are so significant that they want to protect, and how do they want to protect them? So you were talking about, is that an implied contract in regards to the research? My position may be a little different than Sam, and I'm sure you'd have no trouble telling me if it is that that is an implied contract. If the tribe has some regulation on you under existing law, which may change next week, who knows what the Supreme Court does, but under current existing law, they have that regulatory authority when it affects the health, welfare of the tribe. I think most of the research that's being done is going to fall into that category. So I think that regulation is recognized by the U.S. Supreme Court, and is it a contract, but it's a regulation. So I think there's two ways you can look at that, as either applied contract or a form of regulation that the tribe has some recognized authority to exercise. I think tribes need to utilize that regulation power to make sure that there is not research activities going on that affect those areas inappropriately for the tribal community. And that's one of the things that tribes can regulate in a variety of areas. This is another area that they can regulate in. I think tribes are less inclined to regulate. I think a lot of it's finances, to be perfectly honest with you. There's only so many codes that tribes have the finances to draft, and that may not be the highest on their list of priorities. But it certainly is a power that tribes can utilize in looking at how they can try and protect those resources, that knowledge, those values within their community. So that, to me, is how you I think as a tribe, you begin to look at developing your codes. One of the things that I always phrase this title of is, would you, could you, should you, as the philosophy of how tribes can approach doing their ethics code. What it all comes down to me is education. And all tribal codes are a tool for educating both tribal membership, other people within the tribal community, and people coming into that tribal community of what is expected of them. Historically, that may not have been necessary, but with the reality of reservation conditions now, you have a lot of non-Indians, non-member Indians, you have a lot of, I don't want to say transient, but people who are there just for a brief period of time on the community, so they are not necessarily an integrated part of that community, and they need to know what is expected of them. So in Montana, in particular, I think we have a wonderful example of the Indian Education for All requirements that I think this falls into. One of the ways to address the research is to get that Indian education for all in the broader scheme of things, so people understand that there may be different requirements within Indian country. So how many of you, when you were growing up, learned about all three sovereigns in your school system? When they talked about the tribal sovereignty, or when they talked about sovereignty, what sovereigns did you learn about? You learned about state and federal. That's what the books say. But that third sovereign out there is tribal sovereignty. And that component being taught is going to make a huge difference in the research arena as well, because they're going to understand that there's maybe another step that they need to take when they're working with an Indian country. I'm going to share a story from when I was working with the Southern Ute tribe down there, and we had a researcher come in that wanted data on our juveniles, and told me that I had to give them the data. I was working with the court system, that I had to give them the data on their juveniles. And I just said, no, I don't. Our code doesn't allow it. In fact, our code has very strict provisions for when that kind of information can be released and the steps you have to go to take it. And the person was very irritated with me. And I just said, you're not going to get it. But that's that lack of sensitivity that because the state allowed it, they just assumed that they could come into the reservation